Matt, welcome. I'm so excited to have
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, cheers.
Cheers, yeah, indeed.
So Matt, how do you take your coffee?
Well, I think you'll appreciate the answer. Depends on the coffee.
Absolutely.
I actually drink it black more now than anything else, especially if it's really tasty and has a lot of its own, just notes that are coming out or whatever. But if it's iced coffee, I might throw some cream and sugar in there too. Yeah. And then I wanted to ask you, this is kind of a silly question, but have you ever burned your tongue and then been like totally delayed in your whole process because you can't taste anything? Because you have to like care for your tongue.
You
You
do.
have to watch out for it.
And that was probably my biggest concern during the coronavirus scare, and I did not want to get sick.
Yeah, you lose your taste buds.
Because I couldn't lose my sense of smell and taste. Because that's how I determine the coffee.
Yeah.
So, I do protect my tongue a lot.
That's good.
Even last night I was eating, and we were eating some Tex-Mex food.
Sure.
And I love spicy stuff, but whenever I started noticing, it's like the acidity and everything starting to attack my tongue. I don't know if you ever experienced that, with certain foods. I was like, you know what? I actually cut back on that part of the food I was eating, even though I loved it. It was really tasty.
Right.
No, I can't have this affect my tongue.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've known you a while, but there's still so much I don't know about you. So first, I would you've been doing music a while. But how did you first get into music? And
Yeah. So I kind of realized in middle school, I think I was in 6th grade, I decided to join band.
Okay.
And I think literally the moment I started learning how to play my first instrument, which was the trumpet,
Okay.
I realized that I loved music, and I wanted to do something with it for the rest of my life.
6th grade.
6th grade, yeah.
I remember joining band in 6th grade too.
Yeah.
I did the snare drum.
Oh, cool.
I was not good at it.
I gotta say, so I really joined band because my older brother had joined it, and I just saw that he loved it so much. He had a good time and lots of good friends, just a good environment to grow up in, and so I joined primarily just to kind of follow that path, and I know my parents would be happy with that. But he was a saxophone player, and so for some reason I had always wanted to play trumpet.
Yeah.
And so I tried it out, that first time, and it worked out, and I think I naturally am a good brass player.
Yeah.
So it just, Providence, it just worked out. Eventually moved on to French horn, and really had pretty formal training all throughout my entire schooling. Ended up going to school for music education, where my concentration was in French horn. Did some vocal stuff too, because I wanted to eventually, or I realized I wanted to eventually teach elementary music, which is my full-time job now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, and it's a wild time all year long, and it's exhausting. But especially now that I have my own kid, it's really cool just to kind of expose these kids to the joy that I've gotten through music, and trying to help them understand what they can get from it too.
So as somebody that came through discovered your love for music through school, the school environment,
Right.
and that. For me, I remember it's you had to choose choir or band.
Right.
I chose band because I knew I couldn't sing, and then I realized I couldn't even play a drum properly. So obviously I didn't I just did it for as long as I had to do it.
Right.
But you you discovered it to the point that you knew you wanted to do this your whole life, and then you even go to that point of teaching. Can you tell me why do you think music is so important to the education process and for young people, and then even for those of us that are older, that even somebody like myself, I'm tone deaf, I can't keep a beat, but I'd still love music. Why is it important for everyone to experience music and music education?
I love this question. I'm not going to try to quote somebody, but I'm going to probably get kind of close. Music expresses things in the human soul that cannot be expressed otherwise.
Yeah.
And a lot of, especially kids when they're growing up, teenagers in high school, whether they're involved in music because of the classes they're taking, like choir, band, orchestra, or something, most of them, even if they're not doing those things, love the music that they listen to.
Yeah.
And I tell my students, especially my older ones, as you get older, you're either going to be a music consumer or you're going to be a music creator. Almost everyone in the world is one or the other, and sometimes both.
Yeah.
And my job is not to push you onto one of those things. My job is to help you understand where you fit into that, because both of those categories need each other to exist.
Yeah.
We need people who appreciate music, and those people need people to create it so they can listen to it and enjoy it and find themselves within it. And vice versa, the people who create it need people to appreciate it to, push them forward. And so I think that no matter where you fall on that spectrum, music helps us to connect not only with each other but with ourselves.
Yeah.
And just to bring some spirituality into it, personally, it's how I connect with God.
Okay.
And that's how I once I fell in love with music and in 6th grade, and I think I was 11 at the time, I always say that's kind of my first love before anything else, before, my wife and before even I found my faith. And then as I got older, I kind of found my faith through music.
Okay.
And the way I like to say it now is that God kind of found me through the music that I already loved.
So, and love this.
A bunch of questions there.
No, that's great. That's great. And I think that's, so as somebody like you talked about, like you're either a music consumer or you're a creator. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're at both.
Right.
You fall in that both category.
Definitely.
You're a creator, but obviously you love music and you consume it. You have to consume the music that your students are creating.
Sure. Yep.
So when you're creating your music, and you've done quite a bit of music creation. You've written quite a few songs, right? You've done a lot of what's that process like for you? What are you thinking about when you're creating a new song? Is in that process. Can you explain that to me?
Sure.
As somebody that's strictly a consumer that has really don't know a lot about music, explain it to me so that I can appreciate this process that you go through.
Yeah, I will try. I feel like one of my most lacking things about my life is my discipline in a lot of things, including my music writing process.
Okay.
But I will say that the songs that I'm most proud of and the songs that I have actually pushed to release, which are really just a handful, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But the ones that I have released, the process has usually been, the thought has come from a very personal place for me.
Okay.
Either that's an issue with my family, or I wrote a song for my wife that I'm really happy with, and I love that song that I wrote for her. I wrote a song, one that I'll be sharing later today, actually, about my firstborn son before he was born, and then just a lot of just personal things that I know that other people can relate to, and so that's good, and I'm glad that I can share that for others as well. But they usually come out of a personal reflection. Mm-hmm. I can't say there's a step-by-step way that I usually do it, but usually a thought comes in my brain, and if I have time to run with it, then I run with it, and I would say that the song kind of writes itself. Of course, it's not always that easy, and there's a couple. One song I wrote called "Anyway" was actually a really fun process, but I had this thought. And whether it was divine providence or some random thing I probably saw on Facebook or whatever, but I wrote the song based on two things. It was the poem that Mother Teresa had allegedly written on her wall somewhere about, so and so does this and this, be kind to them anyway. And I kind of took that and reworked the words into the words that I put in my song.
Yeah.
But I put that poem together with this random story that I happened to have heard somehow. I don't even know where I originally found it, but it was actually an excerpt from a book on motherhood.
Okay.
And it was this idea that, long story short, it was the idea that even though we don't always see the work that we each other do in the world, I'm not always going to see the stuff you do behind closed doors when you're roasting your coffee.
Yeah.
You're not going to always see the process that
yeah.
I go through, to teach my students or to write my songs or whatever. There's always work to be done that people do not see. But it's still important to do that work wholeheartedly, with dignity, and to your fullest potential. And the reason is that God sees. Even though other people might not see, even though your closest friends and family and your loved ones may not see,
yeah.
God sees. And so putting those two ideas together with the poem that I had heard from Mother Teresa about being kind anyway, I was kind of in this place. It was during quarantine, and just really self-reflective about just everything that was going on in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of the I guess the negativity that was around in the world at that time.
Yeah.
And it was just hard to watch and experience. And of course, I had those thoughts too sometimes. But I guess it was just like I said, divine providence. And in that moment, I was like, these two things fit well together, and this is needed right now for myself. But also like, let's share it too. And it kind of happened that way.
All right.
Speaking of process, I would love to hear a little bit more about a specific part of your process.
Okay.
So, like writing a song, like any art form really, roasting is definitely its own art form, I would say.
But probably like music, there's a lot of science
Right.
and math behind it
Sure,
too. Like
100%.
it's not 100% art. It's
Right.
There's like method behind it, right?
There's
Yeah.
definitely method, and there's also feel to it, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to know, especially in the coffee that you created, Zelly Beans, like it's just so flavorful, and it has so much. Quite frankly, it has so much taste to it.
Yeah.
How do you decide when you have a bean that you're like, okay, we're gonna roast this bean?
Okay.
How do you decide what flavors to pull out of that bean to be more prominent or more subdued? And then how do you go about getting those specific flavors?
It's a great question. It's a great question. And it all, like you kind of hinted at, it all starts with that individual bean.
Mm-hmm.
And that individual bean is grown in a certain place in the world, in a certain altitude, and it's also a certain variety. So there's aspects to that bean that I already know about when I get it. I know about the farm that it's coming from. I know the process that it's gone through. I know all these elements to it. And I've already sample roasted. So I've already had like a small amount that I've sample roasted, and I have an idea of a certain flavor, like some flavors that are in there.
Sure.
And I know like aspects about it. So I take that and I'm starting out with that, and then and I go from there, and I'll do 3 to 4 smaller batches, and each batch I will roast slightly differently.
Okay. On purpose.
On purpose, yeah,
Right.
because based off of how long it's roasted, the temperature, all the different aspects, you can pull out different flavor notes.
Right. Different.
So, and I'll do 3 to 4 different times, and I'll cup it or taste that one coffee that's been roasted 4 different ways, and I'll try each one of them, and I'll see what elements I'm tasting based off of it, based off how I roasted, the heat, the time, the airflow, all of those different attributes. And I'm trying not to make it drastic. I'm not trying to make drastic changes.
Right.
Because if I make drastic changes, I may not know like what change produced that flavor note.
Sure.
So let's say this one coffee, the first time I did it, I roasted for this amount of time at this temperature. Next time, I'll keep everything the same, but I may roast it an additional 20 seconds.
Scientific
So
process.
not even
Yeah.
a whole lot.
Right.
And then the third time, I'll roast it same as the first time, same time, but I might start it at a higher temperature.
Right.
And then the fourth time, I will do it. I'll keep all the other elements the same, but I want to finish it at a higher temperature.
Okay.
So each different time, like I'll taste it and I get different notes out of it. So I'm letting the coffee speak to me,
Yes.
and not me trying to dictate what's going to come out of the coffee. So based off of that, I'll be able to see, like, you know what, this has amazing citrus notes, or it has some great blueberry fruity notes to it, or it has some, you know what, this is really chocolatey. I want to pull out these chocolate notes to it. But at the same time, we're not ignoring the body of the coffee. We're not ignoring all the different elements of the coffee. And it's funny you're asking me about this now, because I'm actually about to be going through this process I'm actually going to be participating in a coffee roasting competition.
Ooh.
Which you will be invited to.
All right.
And part of that process is going to be like, I'm going to do this with this competition coffee. I only have a limited amount of coffee, so
Sure.
I can't just do like a bunch of samples. I have
Right.
to be able to hone it in pretty quickly,
Okay.
know what I'm doing with it, and trying to pull out all the flavors that I think are going to highlight and be tasty about it.
That's cool.
So yeah.
That's really cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Oh wait, no. First, I want to know, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, what's the song that you're going to be playing? Tell me a little bit about like why you chose the song that you
Sure.
want to share.
The song I'm going to share today is called "1,000 Empty Picture Frames," and it's the song that I mentioned earlier that I wrote right before my first son was born. And I decided to share it today because it kind of has a little bit of new meaning because we're actually expecting our second child in a few months. And I revisited the song, and it kind of it's just happening all over again.
Yeah.
Know? But it also has lots of new meaning to us as well. My wife and I had some struggles with fertility and stuff over the last year or two, and so the song, as you'll hear, kind of it's kind of about the waiting process. And I think even back to when I wrote it originally, I didn't really realize that it would speak even more clearly to us now.
Yeah.
In that whole process that we have gone through. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share it with you. I think it'll be...
I'm so excited to hear it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's time to grow up, time to grow old. It's time to grow in ways I've never known. You'll teach me so much about so many things, about myself, your mother, our limits and extremes. Like 1,000 empty picture frames waiting to be filled, I am waiting on some memories. Fill my head with thoughts and dreams of you, the life I hope you build. Here's to waiting on some memory. Newest of chances, clearest of hearts, cleanest of slates, the freshest of stars. You are my potential, my greatest success. You may see me at my worst, but certainly my best. Like 1,000 empty picture frames waiting to be filled, I am waiting on some memory. And I fill my head with thoughts and dreams of you, the life I hope you build. Here's to waiting on some memories. Whoa. Here's to waiting. Here's to waiting. Waiting on some memory.
Or as musicians, like if my hands get screwed up, I'm out of a job.
Doctor Strange. The Marvel.
Oh, right.
I figured that was like a known like.
You know, it
character.
totally was. For some reason, I was thinking when you said Doctor Strange, my immediately thought was like
We're done, right?